Good morning. May God bless you. It's such a blessing to just be here, and we are today on episode 3 of Emotional Health, this sermon series that will take 7 Sundays in total, and you keep coming back. That's probably a good sign. Or you forget that I'm preaching, but still, I'm glad that you're here. The last 2 weeks we saw Elijah on the first Sunday, and we saw these emotions: worried, weary, lonely, and then we saw Jonah, lost in despair and angry. And today we're going to see 3 new emotions. We're going to be looking at busy but distracted, indifferent, in apathy, and coasting like a highway. And so on those 2, Elijah and Jonah, both are in the Old Testament. Both are men. So today, to switch it up a bit, we're going to go to the New Testament, and we're not going to see a man. We're going to look at a woman, and her name is Martha. Today, we're going to see Martha's emotions. And the first thing that we see is that she is so busy for the Lord, yet so distracted. She's like a busy street. I'm not sure if this, Trisha, you wrote this, right? But every time I say something like that, Trisha wrote it, I think it's really nice. You may feel like a busy street. You felt so busy. You haven't stopped to consider how you're doing spiritually. And I want to start with something really positive, okay? Today I want to start with something beautiful. I want to share with you 3 beautiful stages in our discipleship. 3 beautiful stages when we're serving the Lord. And the first one is we open to Jesus and welcome him. You may remember the time when that happened to you. Look at Martha, and I'm going to read the same verse, Luke 10:38, in 2 different versions. Martha welcomed Jesus into her home. That's the CSB, Christian Standard Bible. The NIV says Martha opened her home to Jesus. If you substitute the word home for 1 second, for the word heart, let's read it again. Ready? Martha welcomed Jesus into her heart. Martha opened her heart to Jesus. Isn't that beautiful? And perhaps you remember when that happened to you. Some of us, we've been in the church all of our lives, and it's kind of hard for us to understand when that happened. For some of us, I was baptized when I was 14. That's 26 years ago almost. And sometimes I feel like this just recently. Sometimes I feel like I've just been opening my heart to Jesus. That's what Martha does. She opens her home. Often we read or hear sermons about Martha that are not very, very positive. But here's something very positive. Martha opened her home to Jesus. The second stage, another beautiful stage, is we see others also open to Jesus and welcome him. And especially for those of us who have family members that have come to Christ, that is just absolutely beautiful. Look what happens. Mary, her sister, sat at the Lord's feet. Whenever you come to Jesus, whenever you come to Christ, but then somebody comes to Jesus with you, and you get to experience that, that is just beautiful. That is wonderful. Some of us have brought our family members to Jesus, and that is beautiful. And the third one is we see others grow spiritually. Not only Mary was sitting at the Lord's feet, but she was listening to what he said, and she's growing. And Martha gets to experience this. Martha has Mary right there, listening to Jesus, at the feet of Jesus. Isn't that just beautiful? I want to be present when Noah and Franco grow into disciples. I've been present in Dana's growth in discipleship. I mean, we studied with her like 6 years ago, and I had the blessing of baptizing her and seeing her now growing. For you as a parent, I'm not her parent, but kind of, but for you as a family member, that is just beautiful. Now, here's the bad part. You know, one painful mistake that we may do when we are busy at serving is not being present when all of that happens. And it says here that Mary was having all of that with Jesus, but the verse says, but Martha was distracted. I don't want that to happen to me with my kids. I don't want to one day say, Noah is ready to leave the house. I mean, in 20 days, he'll be turning 4 years old. Yeah, I know. Life is just going really fast. My mom even thought he was going to turn 5 because he's so big. But one day, you know, he'll leave the house. And I don't want to look back and say, where was I when all of that happened? See, Martha is distracted. I love this thing about Gestalt therapy by Fritz Perls. He has this thing called the here and now. You may look it up online, talk to Catherine about it. She knows all about it. But this older fella, Fritz Perls, back in the day, made this the here and now. And it's used by so many counselors, by so many therapists, you know, people who live in the past, who may be experiencing some type of depression, you know, people who live in the future, who may be experiencing some type of anxiety, and sometimes they're correlated. Some people experiencing depression live in the past, and some people experiencing anxiety living in the future with things that are not actually happening. And he has this thing, you know, about the here and now, living in the present, living in the moment. And when we are Christians, sometimes we need to apply some of those techniques, because sometimes we just forget to be present and to live the moment. See, the problem with Martha is not that she's not there. Physically, she's there. You can be physically here and yet not be here. So I want to share a story really quick, but this picture is Catherine and I at the movie theater here last Tuesday. We've been going Tuesday nights after ESL. We go home, we drop the kids to bed, and we leave them asleep. We pray to God that they won't wake up. We go to the movies. We have a camera. Hey, they're with God. What better, right? No, they're with Donna. Don't worry about it. They're with Donna. I just wanted to scare you. And Donna takes care of them. I mean, they're asleep. She's really not doing much, but we appreciate that, Donna. No, anyway, so Tuesdays we go to the movie theaters, and that's our date, you know, that's our time, Catherine and I. And ever since we started dating, that was Catherine's thing, like for me to take her to the movie theater. And it's really cool because Tuesday is really cheap. This is not a commercial. But hey, if you live on the budget, it's like $6 to go to the movie theaters on Tuesdays. So go on Tuesdays. Why not? So Catherine and I were at the movie theaters back in the day in Costa Rica. And one day we're watching this movie. I don't even remember which movie. And I got Catherine. I remember she's on my left. And I'm here. And all of a sudden, I'm going to grab your phone, Jack, for just 1 second, for the purpose of the illustration. Hey, brother. So I'm here, and Catherine is right here, and I'm like this. And after a few minutes, Catherine was like, "What are you doing?" And I'm like, "Oh, nothing. I'm just answering a message from this person at church that has an idea about new songs." We went home, and she was like, "I think we need to talk." And I was totally oblivious. I was like, "What's wrong with that?" She said, "Well, we're on a date." And she was absolutely right. I was either on the date, at the date, in the date, or I was not, or I was working. And I was making that mistake so often for years. I mean, we were already married. We had been married, I don't remember, 4 or 5 years already. This is like 2016, 17 type. And I was making that mistake. I thought, hey, I work for the church. I'm a minister. I'm supposed to answer whoever messages me from the church in the middle of the movies. And then I realized she's right. I can give my 100% to the Lord when I'm serving and I'm busy at working. There's nothing wrong with being busy at working and serving the Lord and praise the Lord. And you're like, yeah, I'm busy. But then you take that and say, I'm just going to experience. I'm just going to be present with my family, with my wife, with my kids. Now I get back to work and I'm 100% focused at work. And the question I have for you today is, are you present and experiencing all that God is doing? See, I don't know if you see it or not, but there are so many things happening here at the Church of Christ in Green Bay. So many wonderful things. It's almost like every day we have something. I mean, just look at the announcements. They last, I don't even know how long. But it's like slide after slide, and Caleb is going to come here and talk about everything that is being done. I don't know if you see it, but it's so wonderful. And I don't know if you're present and experiencing that. I mean, you can still be there, and you may say, wow, these people are always there, and not really be there. You see the difference? I mean, you can be busy and working like Martha. There's nothing wrong with what Martha is doing. She's actually serving the Lord and whoever was in that house. But the problem is that she was not grasping it. She was not experiencing it. She was not present. She was not really there. So number 2, indifferent. The word is apathy. I thought I'll just use the word indifferent for the sake of the point. But when you are like an apathy desert, you know it isn't good, but you're going through the emotions, feeling nothing. And here's what I have. The main difference between Martha and Mary that I could take from the scripture is this. Martha seems to be indifferent to the necessary service. Okay? And Mary seems to be indifferent to the unnecessary service. I was going to word it differently. I had the word spiritual there. I didn't even know how to say it. Spiritually. I was asking Trisha, like, how should I say it? Spiritual. But then I figured, the more I read it, I was like, they're both doing spiritual things. I mean, Martha is serving the Lord. How more spiritual can you get? Martha is worried because she's serving the Lord. She's serving Jesus. Nothing wrong with that. And we need to understand that. It's not what she's doing. It's that there are many options. And see, Mary has the ability to say, yes, that's service. Yes, in that time, I mean, that's what the culture was. Men just sat and talked or listened, and women served. That was the culture back then. Not anymore. But then Martha is like, what's up with Mary? Why is she sitting with the men? Why is she not helping me serve? And so Mary has the ability to say, I'm actually indifferent to that which is not necessary. Martha cannot see that. Martha doesn't have that ability. See, Martha welcomed Jesus into her home, so beautiful, but then Mary sat at the Lord's feet listening to what he said. But Martha was so distracted by all the things that she had to do, all her tasks. And then Jesus says, Martha, few things are needed. Actually, only one. Only one was necessary. See, I'm not making this up. I mean, Jesus said it. Martha could have said, but Jesus, like, we are women, we're supposed to serve you and the rest of the men who are here. Jesus, let's see what he says. Few things are needed, or indeed only one. I love this song by the Lumineers, Stubborn Love. And one of the lines in the song says, the opposite of love is indifference. I love that line. It's the line that catches me when I listen to that song. The opposite of love is indifference. And I listened to that, and that was kind of catchy. I was like driving one day. Oh, the opposite of love is indifference. And the more I thought about it, and this is not a church song by any means. I mean, you're not gonna listen to this song in K-Love or anything like that. Don't worry about it. But the more I listened to it, I was like, 1 Corinthians 13. Love is kind. Love is not. Love is not indifferent. In fact, like, if you want to be really unloving to your spouse, don't say anything. Don't do anything. Just be completely indifferent. That will show them, Like if Catherine talked to me about one of her problems, issues, or something that is going on, and I just didn't know what to say, which is like 99% of the time. I just don't know what to say. And then I remember, I look in the mirror, I'm like, oh, I'm a guy. I'm thinking, why do I need to say? Actually, I don't need to say anything. See, men, we think that we have to say something. We don't know what to say. And it bothers us. But it bothers the woman. Why is he thinking and not doing anything and not saying anything? Why? Mainly, her concern is, why doesn't he look like he's listening? And you may show indifference. You may show indifference in so many ways. You can be there. I can be there with Catherine, and she may talk to me, and I just show her indifference. What I'm going to explain to you in one illustration that I have, an anecdote, a story, I'm going to open my heart. This has hurt me for many years. About 10 years ago, this person at church was graduating from high school. And so I went to the graduation. I mean, I knew the family. I knew they would go to church, like they're church people. And so this boy is graduating from high school, and I show up, and I see the mom, and I talk to the mom, and I'm like, hey, like, where's the, me, I'm always like asking the wrong questions. Hey, where's such and such? Where's the dad? Where's your husband? Oh, he's busy. Oh, he couldn't come. And I follow up with a question like, I need to just shut up right there. Oh, he couldn't come. Oh, yeah, he couldn't. He's busy. He's at work. Well, this is what she said. Well, he's working on a church lesson. He couldn't come. It's been like 10 years. And at that moment, I broke down. I looked at myself in a mirror, and I said, no way. And at first, I think I was angry at the dad and angry at the whole situation, kind of. And when I went home, I was like, that cannot be me in the future. We're going to talk about guilt eventually, I promise. But I always come back to it. It made me feel guilty thinking in my anxiety about the future, if that ever happened to me. I don't know if that, your thought process is sometimes, it goes like that. But I was like, wow. To miss Dana's graduation, to miss Noah's graduation, to miss Franco's graduation not because I had a secular job and the boss was going to fire me if I didn't go, but because I was just sitting somewhere preparing a church lesson to serve the Lord. See how wrong we can get it? To serve the Lord? When the Lord's main job He's giving me is as a spouse, as a husband, as a father. That's the main thing. That's the main job. That's how I honor God in the first place, as a husband, as a father, as a brother to my brothers and sisters, etc. But see, sometimes we get it really, really wrong. Number 3, coasting. You may feel like a coasting highway. You may feel like your spiritual life has been set on cruise control, coasting, autopilot. I love the ability that my car has to go on cruise control. I love it. I didn't grow up with that, so I use it every time I can. You know, like when I'm on 172 on Airport Drive, it's 55 miles per hour, so I set the cruise control on 55 miles per hour, right? 55 miles per hour, you know, this is being broadcasted. So I set the cruise control, and I just put my feet down, let go of the pedal. In fact, my car has the ability to like get as close or as far from the car in front of me, you know, as much as I want it. So I put it, and my car has the ability that it won't let me change lanes unless I put the signal. That is like, I was like overwhelmed when I first saw it and realized. Like I was going right, and the car was like, no, you're not. And then one day I was like, I'm going to go to the left lane. No, you're not. You know, you're going to stay here. And I was like, oh, I got to put the signal. I always put the signal, by the way. But, you know, just those times when you're going to put the signal after you started going right. And so now I realize I got to put the right signal. And now the car lets me go. I love it. But, you know, it can also be dangerous. And it says, I think it says in the panel something, you know, it's in English, but I think it says like, it could be dangerous. Just be alert, be aware. And sometimes we take our spiritual lives, our Christianity, like that. We're set on cruise control. In fact, some of us have an answer for everything. Why do we do things? We already being programmed. Like we have a chip inside. I have a chip inside from when I was growing up to answer spiritual questions. And spiritual questions, those meant, why do you not worship with instruments? Oh, you know, and I got all these verses. Why don't women serve, you know, worship service? And I'm programmed. I'm on automatic cruise control, autopilot. And here are 3 dangers while you're on autopilot and coasting. First one, mistaking what needs to be done. Sometimes we do that, or we may do that. We may mistake what needs to be done. And Martha was distracted by her many tasks. This is the same verse in 2 different versions. CSB says, Martha was distracted by her many tasks. The NIV says, Martha was distracted by all the preparations that had to be made. I don't know if you see the difference, but I underlined it for you. It's very different. The same verse shows us 2 different, perspectives. It's very different to be busy and distracted by your tasks than by everything that had to be made. You see the difference? I want to be focused on the second one, on what has to be made. I need help from my wife and from others. Help me realize when it's just my task. When I'm putting tasks on top of tasks and I have all this spiritual life and things for the church, but it's just my task. It's your task. And the Lord is actually, saying it's not necessary. It's not really what needs to be done. It's not really what needs to be made. I'm going to tell you, this will be a wonderful practice. It will solve so many issues if all of us in this congregation, this small congregation, if all of us had the ability to differentiate between the two. and to say, we're going to do this because we choose to do it, rather than we're going to do this because we have to do it. See the difference? That's why sometimes I'm very hesitant when somebody tries to tell me and show me that needs to be done. And I wonder, really, is that what Jesus would say? What needs to be done? You got to be careful, because we've grown up in a church, in a religious group that has a tendency to make a rule about everything. And so number 2, demanding more from self and from others. This is the biggest one for me. This is one of the things that I've had to work the most in my entire life. Martha comes to Jesus, and look at her tone. Please just look at her choice of words and tone. She says, Lord, don't you care that my sister has left me to serve alone? So tell her to give me a hand. It sounds almost like, first there's a complaint, if you can see it. Complaining to Jesus. She doesn't go to Mary. I have so many questions. Every time I read a verse like that, it's like, why didn't she just go to Mary? When she goes to Jesus. And then at the end, she's giving a command to Jesus. So tell her to give me a hand. There's not even a please in there. Would you please ask her to give me? No, tell her to give me a hand. And sometimes we demand more from ourselves. And we say, we have to do this. We got to do this. This has to be done. We got to be here. We got to be here every time the door is open. Anything that is, whatever is the church is doing, deciding to do, I got to volunteer. I got to be there. I struggle with that sometimes. You've heard the word FOMO, F-O-M-O? It stands for fear of missing out. And sometimes I have that in church. I have a fear of missing out in spiritual stuff. I want to be there. Number 1, I get paid to be there, which is my job, and that is a blessing. But number 2, if I'm not there, I haven't gone to Paul's Pantry. And how do I explain to Bailey and to Lance? They probably understand it. They probably don't look down on me. But sometimes I feel like, hey, I'm lacking off. I'm not being a good Christian because I'm not there. Paul's Pantry. And then I see the sign-up sheet for December 14th, next Saturday. It's already filled up with everybody, more than probably they need. And I'm like, well, And it's not good. That's not mature at all. When you're here, when you're doing something for Jesus because you just feel that you have to, you know what's going to happen later? You're going to drag everybody along with you, and then you're going to say, hey, I'm doing this. You all better be here. That happens with so many Christians. That's one of the biggest issues in the South today, in here in the United States. People that go to church on Sunday nights. And guess what? Most churches, if not every church, is less than half the attendance. Those worship services in the evening, Sunday night, in the South, have less than half attendance than in the morning. And the people at night are praying for the people that didn't come back at night. It doesn't make sense to me. Like if you open the door Sunday morning and then Sunday night, and you want to go to both, great. But some people won't. So stop dragging everybody along with you. Because you are demanding so much from yourself. See, if you were okay with you being there both times and you had what Jesus wanted, you'll be okay that people are not showing up. If you're okay with being here today right now and you have the mindset of Jesus, you wouldn't be thinking about those who didn't come today. You may be concerned for them if you don't see them, but you wouldn't feel like shame on them for not coming. You see the difference? You start demanding so much from yourself, like Martha, and you end up demanding from others. And number 3, listen, what is better for the Spirit? Jesus answered her, Martha, Martha, you are worried and upset about many things, but few things are needed, or indeed, only one. Wow. See, Martha wasn't doing anything wrong for the Spirit in serving, but Jesus says there was a better one. He says, Mary, Mary who sat at my feet, Mary who is listening to my words, Mary has chosen what is better. You get to choose, you know. Most of us here are adults. I can't say that in the Spanish worship. At least not yet. I mean, in the Spanish worship, most of them are not adults. But most of us here are adults. And we get to choose. We get to choose what is better, and sometimes we don't choose that. One solution to coasting an autopilot is choose a lifestyle that is spiritual. Friday night, we were at home with the youth, the teens, and we had this verse with them. Galatians 5, 22, 23. It says, but the fruit of the Spirit is. It's got 9 parts to it. I've heard all kinds of stuff about this. You know, some people say the fruits of the Spirit, and they do it individually. And then some people think, oh, I just got to work in being more loving. I just got to work in being more patient. Well, you know, sometimes I read it this way, and it's like the fruit of the Spirit is one fruit with 9 parts. You're either spiritual. I was telling the youth this, the teens, you're either spiritual or you're not. You have all of that with the Spirit in you. You get to choose. You get to choose a life that is spiritual, or you get to choose something that is not the better part. Every time my friend Chase and I talk, we talk like once a week over the phone, and this is what he says. You know, I ask him, hey man, how is life? And he says, pura vida. And he asks me, how is life? And I say, pura vida. And you know what we both say? It's the life I chose. Pura vida means, like, in this context, like great. Life is good. And we both say, it's the life I chose. It's the life you choose. For most of us, the life that you have is the life that you've chosen. You can still choose a spiritual life. What is the lifestyle that you are choosing? I want to finish today like I've been doing with my testimony. So I've told you a little bit of my story 2 Sundays ago. If you were not here, you can listen to the recording or go online and see the video. Long story short, I had panic attacks for many years back, but then when I realized that I really had them was in 2017. So that's almost 8 years ago. January 4th is coming back. It's almost here. So that will be my anniversary. January 4th, 2017. And that week was the hardest for my life in so many ways. And I went to the psychologist. And the psychologist, Ana Gutierrez, great psychologist, you know, I'm indebted to her for all the help that she did for me. And I go to the psychologist and I'm like, I don't really know what to do. I don't really know what to say. And she says, tell me about your work. I was like, yeah, I do this. Yeah, describe to me. Oh, you know, I do this, I do that, you know. And she said, why do you do all that? I was like, no one's ever asked me that before. Well, you know, it's part of my job. I do this, I do that, I have to do this. And then I start changing my speech. I have to do this, you know, I must do that. And then she's like, why do you have to? And I was like, whoa, no one has actually asked me that in my life. She said, why do you have to? The more I talked, I don't know how many, if she had like a little popcorn to throw to my face every time I said, because I have to, because I must, because I need to, man, we would have run out of popcorn. It was so much. I was there an hour and a half. I hadn't eaten in days. I left that therapy session with Catherine, and I told her, I'm hungry. And the first thing that I did was I went home. I started looking at my sermons. You know, I had been preaching for a few years now. And I started looking at my sermons, and then it hit me. I was like, most of my sermons, the points were, we must, we have to. That was my speech to the church. We have, you know, like preachers, we have sometimes a way of preaching and things that we say that you're like, oh, it sounds like, you know, it sounded like Diego. I have to, we have to, we must, we gotta be better. And I remember this one sermon in particular, you know, it was published in the United States, in Memphis, in one of the churches, and I went back and looked, I found it. It was one of these churches that did the 40 days of prayer, and one of those was me. And I was afraid of what I was going to look because I remember the topic that I chose. It wasn't given to me. And I went, and I grabbed the page, and I looked at it. Short sermon that I wrote. It was living through self-exigence. If you don't know what that is demanding more from myself. And when I looked at it and I read it, I just went like this. I promise I went like this. I was like, no way. I had become so busy, so demanding of people around me, so demanding of my life. I was becoming weary. I was so busy. I was indifferent to what was really necessary. I was coasting in cruise control in autopilot. But God is a God of second opportunities. With Elijah in 1 Kings 18:19, we saw that God gave him another chance and said, go back. With Jonah in those 4 chapters, in those 48 verses, we saw that God gave him another chance. And with Mary, it's the same. Lazarus, her brother, dies. Jesus goes and says, Lazarus has died. And Jesus gets there, and Lazarus had already been in the tomb 4 days. As soon as Martha heard that Jesus was coming, she went to meet him. Today, you have been probably Martha. But today you have the opportunity to be Martha that comes to Jesus. You can be the Martha that welcomed Jesus into her home. You can be Mary, or you can be Martha that says, Jesus, I'm not waiting for you to come to my home. I'm coming out to meet you. I don't know if these lessons have been helpful to you so far, but they're helpful to me. I hope that doesn't sound selfish, but I'm preaching this because it's my story. It's what's most helpful to me. And I do hope that in some ways it is helpful to you. Thank you for your time. May God bless you.